So today we're going to look through the roots of the Trinity in the Hebrew Bible. We're going to pick up where we left off. And if you all would excuse me, I got my kids with me this morning. So we're going to look at a passage from Exodus, which is in the Old Testament. And in this particular scene, we have what's called the angel of the Lord who comes, who God sends to protect and to lead the Israelites in the wilderness. And right here in verse 20 of chapter 23, it says, "Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee in the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions. For my name is in him. But if thou shalt indeed but obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto thine enemies and an adversary unto thine adversaries." So notice how God is sending this angel, but he is saying, beware of him, obey his voice, provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions. So this is a special, I guess you could say, case where God is telling them, hey, put the reverence and the fear that you have for me upon this angel. Okay. Then secondly, it says that my name is in him. So you have the name of Yahweh in the angel. Good job. So that's also makes this a very special case and out of the ordinary. And then if you notice also in verse 22 where it says, "But if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak," so you notice how it's the angel's voice, but God is saying that it's his words. He is taking responsibility for what the angel says. What the angel says is what God speaks. Okay, so notice the angel has the fear of God. He can forgive sins, and he is the, you could say, mouthpiece spokesperson for God. And that is, I guess you could say in some sense in verse 21 where it says, "For my name is in him," the whole correlation between, speaking for God and speaking what he says and it being his voice, that has a correlation in itself. So let's look forward to the New Testament to where we can find how the roots of the Trinity are in the Old Testament. So this is an Old Testament passage. Now let's look at the New Testament passage. So right here, in John chapter 12, we have Jesus speaking only what the Father speaks. We see in verse 49, he says, "For I have not spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me. He gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. And I know that his commandment is life everlasting. Whatsoever I speak, therefore, even as the Father said unto me, so I speak." So you see how the same thing where it said in Exodus, wherever he says, "Obey my voice," that is what I speak. You see, Jesus is the same idea, the same concept, the same profile. Jesus is accrediting to himself. He is saying that what God speaks, what I speak, is what the Father says. So now we have Jesus having the authority to forgive sins. We read right here in Luke 5, "And when he saw their faith, he said unto them, Man, thy sins are forgiven thee." And the scribes and Pharisees began to reason, saying, "Who is this which speaketh blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" And so, same idea. God said with the angels, "Fear him, provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions." If you sin against the angel, you sin against me. And who else alone but God can forgive sins? That's exactly the premise of what is the whole idea of what's going on in this chapter, this verse right here. The scribes and the Pharisees, they're the religious elite. They're the ones who know the text, the scriptures inside and out. So when they say, "Who can forgive sins but God alone?" that's exactly why Jesus said it. It was purposeful. He had an intent behind it. Jesus sharing the same name as God. Here we have in John chapter 17, which is known as the Jesus' high priestly prayer. We read right here in verse 6, "I have manifested thy name unto the men which thou gavest me out of the world. Thine they were, and thou gavest them me, and they have kept thy word. Now they have known that all things whatsoever thou hast given me are of thee. For I have given unto them the words which thou gavest me, and they have received them, and have known surely that I come from thee, and they have believed that thou didst send me." So you see right here in verse 6 where he says, "I have manifested thy name unto them." So once again, the whole premise of the name, it's more than just letters. It's a representation, it's a spokesperson, it's themselves, it's their presence when it says that their name is with them. It's more than just, like I said, letters. There's a more deeper meaning, and the same idea for what she says right here in verse 8, for I have given unto them the words which thou gavest me, and in verse 6 where it says I have manifested thy name unto them, somewhat of the same principle, that what I speak is coming from the one whose name I have. I am him in in that premise and the idea. So I share this right here because this concept I feel like is very important. So I have that Jesus is the angel of the Lord. So that's how we have the roots of the Trinity in the Hebrew Bible. But I took a screenshot of this, and many of you know that this is just the Google AI overview. But if you just look up something called the two powers in heaven idea, what it is that the hundreds of years before Jesus came on the scene and before he was born, there was this what's called the Second Temple period. And so in the Second Temple period, the Jewish scribes and the Pharisees were all, living and working together, all this and, normal life, and they were waiting for the Messiah to come. Well, throughout that whole time, there were lots of ideas and teachings that were going on about the Messiah, who he was, and, what he was going to come to and do exactly. And one of those ideas was from the same passages that we just looked through with the Old Testament in Exodus 23. There's multiple passages in the Old Testament where it seems to be that there's a second power, a second figure, a second Yahweh. It's not a second Yahweh, it's Jesus Christ. As in Christians, we can affirm that, but in Jewish thought, they obviously deny Jesus when he comes on the scene. So, with that idea in mind, let's read. The two powers in heaven is a scholarly thesis describing a Second Temple era Jewish belief in secondary divine figure, often the angel of the Lord, who acts alongside the invisible supreme God. This view, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, was not considered heretical until the second century CE, when rabbinic authorities deemed it heresy to combat emerging Christianity. So as you see, I'm not going to read through all these different little points from the AI overview, but I do encourage you to pause it and read through it so you can get the idea. Literally, the Jewish rabbis knew that the Old Testament taught that there was a more higher complexity to God than just one being. But when Jesus came on the scene and they denied him as their Messiah and they killed him and crucified him, then they deemed this idea of the two powers in heaven heretical because in Christianity they embraced Jesus Christ as God. They embraced him as that second power. And the Jewish authorities denied him. So, therefore, to stay consistent, they deemed this view heretical. And so that's why I have this screenshot right here so you can see historically that is what happened. So, historically, we can affirm that Jesus Christ is God, is in the Old Testament. I hope this was a blessing. Excuse my children in the background. I promise they're happy. Let's see here. We're actually all about to get ready to go to church this morning. So I hope that this was helpful. And with that being said, Jesus Christ died, Jesus Christ is risen, and Jesus Christ is coming again soon. Peace.